Good morning, it's 10 o'clock, you're tuned to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm joined today by Sean Martin. How are you, Sean?
Not bad, Tony, yourself?
I'm good. Now, I'm going to get your take, Sean, on transfer deadline day, busy day of hectic activity for Celtic, and get your thoughts on it. I spoke to Alison yesterday and we did a wee video on that, but I've not heard your own take on it. What did you think? If you're a Celtic supporter, are you pleased? Did you want more?
Just on deadline day or the window overall, do you mean?
Well, both on deadline day and the window overall.
Deadline day, I thought, fair enough. I thought the players that they brought in deadline day, the two obviously were kind of expected. I thought the acquisition of Carter Vickers was a good one. I think you could tell, given the times that they announced Jota and Giakoumakis, that there was something else going to be coming out later on. But I think the fact it was a centre back probably was quite a pleasing one for most of the fans. It was an area I think everybody was kind of saying, right, at least one more body would be quite good in there, because you're looking at probably the depth at the moment. It would have been Beaton back at centre back, and I don't think many people want that now. So I think that was a fair enough acquisition. Obviously, you had a couple of departures as well, which I would suggest doesn't necessarily make it direct replacements. I think you could argue that whether Christie and Edward were to stay, even though I didn't think Edward was going to stay, I thought Christie might. I think that Jota and Giakoumakis, you could argue, were needed in addition to, not instead of. And I think that leading into the window overall, I think they've made a lot of signings. As I say in my article analysing the kind of window on the website, credit where it's due, they have concluded a lot of business. But I still think overall, when you look at the squad, I don't think numbers necessarily equate to quality. And I think that the lack of depth, particularly in midfield and out wide, could be damaging in the next few months. But that said, at the same time, there is a point to be made that it is only step one on this rebuild, and there is a big step, but it's still just step one. So as long as that second step is taken in the January window, then you can just about deal with the kind of lack of depth at this moment in time, because you've still got a January window to come where they might dip into the Asian market and fill a few gaps there.
I think the lack in depth was highlighted, Sean, with the bench at Ibrox on Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's really only Tom Rogic being a game changer. He could come on and influence the game. You know, Ayeti was there as well, but that was the only two players that you thought could have any kind of bearing and influence on Sunday's proceedings, you know. So I think a lot of Celtic supporters, whilst they were quite happy with the business that they did, that was a kind of stark and harsh reality, you know. And
I think so, aye. But I mean, we talked about it on Sunday after the game, and I made the point that you're all right. It could have been tactical that he obviously wanted Kyogo through the middle, and Ayeti doesn't really suit playing anywhere else than through the middle. But nonetheless, you're chasing a goal in a derby, and he didn't feel he could put on Ayeti. To me, that's kind of a microcosm of the numbers don't equate to depth kind of argument. And again, no harm to Adam Montgomery, who actually done all right when he came on. Sorrow even done all right when he came on, I thought. Maybe dispossessed a couple of times, but he also played that ball through for Kyogo. But at the same time, when you're chasing a derby, not even if it wasn't a derby, if you're chasing an equaliser or just chasing a goal in a game, it doesn't really fill you with confidence that apart from Rogic, the two players that they put on were an unproven, untested youngster and a defensive midfielder. So I think what you've said there does carry a lot of weight. I think that is exactly the point. I think that's a microcosm of it. And I think you would argue that they've not really solved that, because Edward and Christie were two who were already on the pitch, and obviously one come off. The other one, Christie, shifted about 3 positions to accommodate these tactical changes as well. They're now no longer there as an option. You've taken in another couple of players, but this is where I'm saying you could argue they were needed in addition to rather than instead of, because you're still going to have that same problem. And I suppose you could argue, right, you've got Taylor to come back in and Forrest to come back in there, but they were really the only two main players from the team that plays regularly this season missing on Sunday. And it did cause quite a bit of havoc with the way that he set up the team. He said himself that the reason he ended up going with Kyogo wide was because Forrest was injured, and he didn't want to tinker too much more. So I think that does highlight the depth problems, and I don't think it was solved on deadline day. But as I say, you've got January window, you can just about cope with it. The exception being if there's an injury crisis or a COVID outbreak.
Tell you what was solved though, Sean. Ayer, Christie, Edward, Sham, Griffiths all leaving. Now, what you maybe have now is a more harmonious squad. Would it be fair to say that? And happy players that want to be there. These were guys that I hesitate to use the words agitated for a move, but they were linked with moves away for a long, long time, and maybe that can cause kind of disruption, disharmony in a dressing room. So Ange now knows he has players there that are fully committed and want to be there. And I'm not accusing any Celtic player of not being fully committed, but the squad that's there now, he's got something to work with and build that rapport, build that happiness again.
Oh, I mean, I still think that the way that Christie in particular plays, I don't think his commitment was ever really in doubt. I think the quality issue, his shots in that last year certainly had that carried weight, but the commitment he has on the pitch, I don't think was ever in doubt. Obviously, a lot of people questioned that in the likes of Edward and Cham, and certainly Griffiths on and off the pitch, you could question the commitment there. I think key to what you've said there is that Ange now has a squad full of players who want to be there. Whether or not it actually impacted their performances is up for debate, but nonetheless, he's mentioned a few times the players that want to be there will be the ones that are there at the end of the window and stuff, and that will be the case. That's just, it's logical that will be the case. Otherwise, certain players would still be there. As I say, it still ties into the depth. He mentioned he pretty much used his first couple of months talking to the press to mention, whether subtly or whether just explicitly, that it was the same small core group of players that he was relying on. It's kind of expanded, but in a way that we've kind of touched on already, kind of hasn't as well. So I think injuries will genuinely be key to the next few months before we get to that January window.
Yeah, and also as well, Sean, you mentioned it there that I'm a firm believer that Ange has his eye on the January window and dipping into the Asian market and bringing in a couple of gems like Kyogo. I'm convinced that will happen. It's just the way I think he's going to do business.
Aye, I think he literally mentioned it himself, which I think a lot of people were surprised at, because you don't often get a manager being so just candid, saying, well, no, actually in January I think we'll be looking at the Asian market and the Japanese and all that. And he literally was quoted as saying, well, it's actually easy to get them in our mid-season because it's the end of their season. It's harder to get them now because of the other commitments they've got, the league and the Asian Champions League and stuff. And it basically has told us and told the board as well that is what he wants to do in January. So I suppose watch this space and see who he gets in, because who he got already has impressed. So
yeah, I mean, Aaron Moy rumour still not going away. Would you expect to see maybe somebody like him, or do you think he's maybe got his eye on 3 or 4 different kind of players?
I don't know. I think Ange himself will probably have quite a lengthy list of players that he's happy to take over. And you think in the teams that he's coached, whether it's the Australian national team or whether it's the teams in the Australian League or the Japanese League, particularly with the Australian national team, as much as he still played an attacking brand of football, and this is where I think maybe the signing of Giakoumakis will maybe actually take a wee bit from his Australian days. Tim Cahill was his centre forward. Now, as good a player as he was never known for his talent with the ball at his feet. He was an aerial presence despite his height. He was known as a really an aerial presence. So I think you could maybe see him adapting a wee bit from adopting some of the kind of strategies that he had playing when he managed Australia to get the best out of Tim Cahill. You might find when Giakoumakis is on the pitch and starting, it's maybe similar in that way. So in that sense, I wouldn't be surprised to see him, if he does bring someone like Aaron Moy in, he knows what's expected in an Ange team. So that could benefit someone who already knows and doesn't necessarily need to adapt to what's expected in the kind of high intensity nature. That could benefit Celtic.
And also as well, I'm a firm believer, and so is Alisson, that if you can get players in like that, you are building for Champions League qualifiers starting in the January. I really do believe that if you can get guys to come in and, and also with the title race, the way it's going to be, and the potential of the Scottish League winners going straight into the Champions League group stages and that £40 million bounty. I mean, it is an ideal window, as you say, if the Asian season's finished, the Japanese season, to bring those players in and give them 3 or 4 months to settle in. you know, and go
I
for a
think you've
title
got
tilt, you know.
I think you've got a point there, because I think the fact that we will, or it sounds like we will, be shopping in that market, whereas usually we don't. Usually the mid-market, the mid-season market is kind of volatile, depends how teams are doing, depends who's not getting a game. It's a lot of loan signings going left, right and centre and stuff. It doesn't really set you up for the kind of next season, if you know what I mean, if you are looking that far down the line. But the fact that we'd be shopping in a market where that is the case, they would be their season finished and coming in and essentially have that time. I think that could bode well. Obviously, you would want them to hit the ground running, because you wouldn't want to be in qualifiers come next summer. You would want to have that time to bed everybody in, knowing you're going straight into the group stages. But if you plan for the worst, which you would like to think the worst will be second in a qualifier, then that would benefit Celtic surely at that point to have had maybe a few players, maybe a couple, coming in the January permanently rather than on loan, because you've seen the way that Celtic ended the season last year. 3 of the back 4 loan players. Just doesn't make sense to really go forward with that kind of model. So it would be certainly a positive step for me if they're getting away from that model when it comes to January signings.
There's definitely a change in the transfer outlook as well, Sean. You know, a few 26-year-olds coming in, guys at their peak. You know, two loan players coming in, but those with an option to buy at the end of them, Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Most loans that were coming into Celtic weren't with that option to buy. So there's been a shift, I think, in transfer policy. You know, young guys coming in and not. It doesn't seem to be like there's any more kind of projects or people that they buy in cheap and they think they'll sell them further down the line. You know, these are kind of tried and tested players they're trying to bring in and who will make a contribution now and moving forward.
I think so. I think you could make an argument that the only player that they've signed that could be a project, if you want to put it that way, is Abada, because he's only 19. The rest of them, as you say, they're all early to mid-20s. Liam Scales is obviously, I think he's 23. You've got the couple of ones, Uragide and Shaw from Sheffield Wednesday, who are younger. They've not had a sniff so far. I don't know how much of a project they are. They might eventually get in the squads and stuff, but I don't know. I think Uragide's been in the squad, but he doesn't seem to be fancied. I think so. I think when you look at the arrivals, it is really only Abada that you could term a kind of traditional Celtic signing of the past however many years, and the rest of them are presumably first team ready. Furuhashi, Starfelt, Juranovic, Hart, Carter-Vickers, Jota, Giacomakis, McCarthy. Literally most of them should be able to go straight into the first team at this point and not have not be considered a project.
Now, we'll look at the season just so far. Sean, I want you to get your take on how you thought everything has gone so far. Mixed bag, ups and downs. But, I mean, the real positive is making the Europa League group stages, you know, after kind of losing to Midtjylland in the Champions League, which kind of came too early. It came too early for Ange because he was recruited too late. You know, if you played Midtjylland now, you would beat them home and away. But making the group stages against a decent Dutch Eredivisie side was a cracking result over 2 legs. But also in the league, you know, you've won 2 and lost 2, so that's something I guess that needs to be addressed moving forward.
I think so. I mean, I do think that it's still early in the season. I think that Hearts defeat still could have went Celtic's way. I think there was a combination of Craig Gordon pulling off a couple of really good saves and Near Beaton not being streetwise and Scott Bain being caught in no man's land at that set piece. Likewise, the Rangers game created enough chances to win it. Didn't. Again, that's a different kind of problem than not playing well enough, if you know what I mean, because they didn't play particularly well against Rangers, but they still created enough to win it. The Midtjylland game, I agree with you. I think it was a wee bit early, and I think it was disappointing that they still didn't do it. But I think that the kind of consensus is if they did play similar to the kind of Cluj year, if they did play them later on, they would beat them. Obviously, that means very little at this point because they didn't beat them. But getting into the group stages for Europa League, fine, good, really good kind of tantalising prospects in that group. I think it'll be a really difficult group though. I think it might be a difficult group, but no, I think obviously it doesn't look good after 4 games in the league having lost 2. But then again, you've seen before Celtic capable of putting together a lengthy win and run, and that's what you would hope for to happen now. I think the signs are definitely there with the way that he's been playing football, particularly at Parkhead. I think away still doesn't look great. Although obviously Celtic had that run of like 5 home games in a row there, which obviously helped them instill that style in the bigger pitch and helped them with the crowd coming back and everything. So I think at that stage you've got to look for the positives, and I think now you would be looking for a lengthy winning run.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you accentuate the positive, that's exactly what you'd be looking for, a going on a winning run. And I made the point to Alison that he now has this international break to get some work in with the players, and really get, a decent kind of time with them to get his another message across, and just say to them to work on things or tweak things that he think that he's not been happy with, So these 2 weeks are kind of vital for Celtic, just to kind of recharge the batteries and go again, as they say.
I think so. I think if you've Greg Taylor's mentioned that he seems to do the media quite a bit now. I noticed for the in-house media anyway, and he's mentioned a couple of times, and Angie's mentioned a couple of times that because of the schedule, they've not really had that much on the training ground in terms of like getting into the nitty-gritty of stuff. It's been mostly video analysis, keeping you ticking over and different things like that. So if that's the way that he's managed to instill it in the team without extensive work on the training ground, if the schedule calms down, which for Celtic it never really does calm down that much, if it calms down even a little, that he can get that and get more of the work that he wants to get done in, then I think it would bode well. I think it would only deepen that kind of commitment to the style that he wants to put in there, and make everybody believe in their roles a wee bit more. I think it's key again that they stay injury free. That's just in the back of my mind. That the depth to me just isn't there in key areas, and I think that is going to be genuinely key to how long the winning run that I'm presuming they're going to go on and then how many they need in January as well. I think will be dictated by that as well.
Is it also key as well that guys like James McCarthy become fit enough to play and contribute, because he was missing at Ibrox on Sunday and people were wondering why, so guys like him do have a vital role to play in that team moving forward, don't they?
I think so. I mean, whether again, Christie's away now, so there's an option there that's now lost, but if you're going with what he's played so far, and McGregor does play the kind of deep role more often than not, Turnbull seems to be probably going to play most weeks. Whether Rogic plays most weeks, I've now got a doubt about, because I thought he would stick with him for the Rangers game, even though he kind of had a poor game against AZ. You would be looking for McCarthy as the senior centre mid there to step in. How he copes with that system will be the key. Yeah. But you can only judge that after he's had a chance to get up to speed and play in it. So you've got Sorrow there. You've actually got Beaton as well. I mean, remember his natural position is defensive mid. It's not centre back, despite where we've seen him for the last few years.
You keep mentioning Beaton, and I keep going. So, if you're marking the report card, Sean, so far, what kind of mark would you give Ange and the Celtic team at the minute?
It's a hard one because, as you say, 2 defeats from 4 games in the league it's not good, but at the same time, I think the style, I think the players have bought in. I think it's already shown if it clicks, you can guarantee goals pretty much if it clicks. I'd say to be sitting in that fence, I'd say maybe a B- if you're going in the American system. Because a B-. As I say, with the transfer window, as much as they've done a lot of business, and they did do a lot of business, 12 in is a lot of people to get in one window. Even thinking of the amount that they've lost, including big personalities like Scott Brown and Ian and stuff like that. To sum it up for me, probably, as I say in this article I've got on the website, another plug there.
Well done.
He's been backed with numbers in that sense, but in my opinion, not quickly enough. I think yet again you saw Celtic's business dragged out across the summer window. 3 deadline day signings is all well and good, but I still think that there could have been business done before when they were done. Certainly with the Champions League qualifiers and stuff, having people signed up but not able to play, they knew that they would have to quarantine, different things like that. They could have had things done quicker, in my opinion. Might be being harsh, but I still think that. He's also been back with a decent amount of funding. They have spent quite a bit, but the key for me is whether that money has been spent on players that actually will fit the system and contribute consistently.
Brilliant. Well, that's been the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I've been Tony Haggerty, been Sean Martin, and if you want to subscribe, it's $2.99 for the first 2 months, and you can help support top quality journalism, supporting the club you love. You can see the ticker tape running along the bottom there. All that remains for you to say is thanks very much for joining us, and thank you, Sean.
Cheers, Tony.